Welcome, everyone. You are here at the Rotary District 7390 District Development Session, and my name is Una Martone. I'm the district trainer. Happy to see your faces tonight. Thank you all for joining. As we get started, if you could mute your audio just to get started to help us eliminate any background noises. You're welcome to unmute yourself if you want to ask a question. You're also welcome to use the chat feature if you want to type a question in the chat feature. And Graham Goodsir, if you don't mind, I will mute you. And if you want to speak up, just wave at me and I will unmute you, okay?
Thank you.
Okay. And let's see, if you can enable your video, we'd love to be able to see faces instead of just seeing all the black boxes. Please do enable your video if you can. And we'd love to see your faces. As I mentioned, and for those who just hopped on the call, this is the Rotary District 7390 District Development Session. And we will get started right now. We're together until 7 o'clock. We have an hour together. If you haven't already, I'll remind you to please mute your audio to avoid any background noises. And if you can, enable your video if you can. I understand that some people cannot enable their video, but if you can, we'd love to see your faces. The topic tonight is Zoom. We're Zooming about Zoom, and the perspective is really for people who are leading Zoom meetings or for people in your club who could use some tips on leading Zoom meetings. It's really not from the perspective of being a participant. It's from the perspective more so of being a facilitator of the Zoom meetings. So I hope that the content is useful to you, not only for all of the Rotary programming that you have in your life, but perhaps even with your professional programming that you need to use Zoom for. So I will be sharing a slide presentation, and I only have a few slides, but hope that you still will use the chat feature to ask questions or raise your hands to ask questions. And I will record this session. It is being recorded now. So if you're not familiar, recording also records all of the comments. Even comments that you think you are making privately will be recorded if the meeting is being recorded. So just so you know, once this recording is going, it records everything. Elizabeth, do you have a question?
Yes, I do.
Go ahead.
Where is the chat feature?
Okay, if you scroll to the bottom of your screen, you'll see a little box that says, or a little icon that says chat. Click on that, and you should be able to see a screen that says type message here.
So I don't see that chat button.
So I just typed in a chat that says right here. And if you don't see that little icon on the bottom of your screen, look on the top of your screen and see where that little chat button is. Once you hit the chat feature, you should be able to see all those chats, those comments that are coming up. Yeah, move your mouse around the bottom. There's several commands across the bottom of the screen.
Yeah, I do see some of them. I see mute, stop video, share screen, record, reactions.
And you don't see one that says chat?
No.
Okay, so I think you might have to go into your Zoom settings, and we're not going to get into that right now. But if you don't see it on the bottom and you see all those other commands, it's probably in your Zoom settings that you have to go into your account and probably toggle a little switch that says enable chat.
All right.
Okay?
Yep, thank you.
All right, so I'm going to start the share screen. Bear with me while I get my slides up. Again, I'll answer questions. You just have to make sure that you let me know. Give me the thumbs up that you can see the slides. Okay, perfect. While you're seeing the slide screen, you can use some little commands to even toggle the view. They're up on top of the pictures. You can show 2 columns in a little box. You can show the pictures in a straight column. You can even move the column. If you didn't know that, you can put your cursor on the row of pictures on the side, and you can move it to the other side if you need to clear your view of content. You can even make the pictures bigger and the slide presentation smaller by using those little buttons on top of the of where the boxes of pictures are. Just to show you one little piece while we get started here. So tonight's district development session is the top 10 or more best practices for hosting Zoom meetings. I couldn't limit these best practices to 10. I told John Anthony in the beginning that there would just be, around 10 best practices. But as I started getting into tips, I thought really so many things will be necessary and important in there. So I added more. Someone asked if the slides will be shared. What John actually did was he took all my notes and he made a 1-page PDF, and he will share that. So it will have all the information on a 1-page PDF for you. Just so you know, these best practices that I've put together come a lot from my professional work that I do with Leadership Harrisburg area. We, like many of you, had to transition to virtual meetings in March. In addition, through Rotary, I've been very active in providing Rotary training. In the fall, we did the entire governor-elect training seminar through a virtual platform. My training partner was a fellow past district governor from Canada, and the Rotary International Assembly, which is normally in January, has been moved to February, and it will be 100% virtual this year. So Rotary has invested a lot of time in me and my fellow international training leaders on how to really deliver a great Zoom meeting, and I'm glad to be able to share and forward some of that information to you today. Of course, I introduced myself. I'm Una Martone, past district governor. I'm also the district trainer and a zone trainer and a Rotary International trainer and president and CEO of Leadership Harrisburg area. So when we're starting to talk about Zoom meetings, I want to talk even before the meeting takes place, and that's in scheduling. So when you are scheduling, know what your Zoom features are. Just like the question that Elizabeth asked in the beginning about the chat feature, she might not have toggled that chat feature. You have to go to your Zoom account to make sure that you know what your Zoom features are. Check your account to know how long of a meeting time can you host. If you're just using a non-paid free Zoom account, you only have 40 minutes to host a meeting. If you have a paid account, you usually have more time, but you just need to check your settings on there, see how much time you have to host a meeting. Also, double check and find out how many participants you can have. If you pay for a Zoom account, or if your club has paid for a Zoom account, or if you're using a district Zoom account, you can probably have more people than you can with the free Zoom account. So the way that you go into Zoom is you just go to the Zoom website and you go to a sign in. And once you sign in, you can look at your account settings. Bill has asked, what happens if the 40-minute time period runs over? If you are using a free Zoom account and you hit 40 minutes, it ends your meeting. You could be in mid-sentence and your meeting will be cut off. And I've been a participant on somebody else's Zoom call when it gets cut off, and it's not the best case scenario. So check all of your Zoom settings before you schedule your meeting. If your Zoom account doesn't have the paid features, ask someone else if they can set up the meeting for you if they have all those features. And if your club is using Zoom a lot, as a club, you can invest in a paid Zoom account. The next thing for scheduling is to know whether you're scheduling a meeting or a webinar. What we're in right now is a meeting. I can see all of you. You can see each other. You can use the chat feature. You can talk. You can unmute yourselves. This is a meeting. If you schedule a webinar, it's one-sided. A webinar is when you just want to push the information and push the content out, and you don't want that interaction. So when you're scheduling your Zoom meeting, make sure you know which kind of Zoom meeting you're scheduling, a meeting like this or a webinar. The next thing is to use calendar appointments with the people that you're inviting. If you're going to go to all of this time to set up a Zoom meeting and take the time to put a program together, you want people to attend. You want to make sure that it's, it's not just you and a couple of folks. You want people to get the most out of it. You want people to participate. And so you've got to remind people. We are all, inundated with technology right now. We're all kind of trying to figure out working from home, going back to work. We're trying to figure out our children's school and all these other things. So it helps if you can send a calendar appointment or if you can send frequent reminders. And that's up to you. I use Microsoft Outlook when I send calendar appointments. It's up to you. I'm just suggesting that if you're going to go to the trouble to putting this forum together, help people attend by giving them some reminders. When you're setting up your meeting, you can also have the choice to use a password. And I recommend always using a password. It prevents other people from accidentally or inadvertently getting into your meeting, and it makes sure that the audience you want there is the only audience that can be there. When you're setting up your meeting, you also have the choice if you want to use a waiting room or not. So the waiting room feature, if you've ever been like me, sometimes you go to a meeting and you try to arrive 5 minutes early, just to be kind of on time, and you get stuck in this waiting room and you're kind of in cyberspace, just frozen there. So if you have a purpose for using the waiting room, like you don't want your audience to join until exactly 12 o'clock, you can establish a waiting room when you're scheduling the meeting. If it really doesn't matter to you, if people just come in and kind of socialize and say hello and greet one another, then don't use the waiting room. Only use it if you need it, because you don't want people to be there until a specific time. And the last thing on this, and then we'll take questions and answers on this part, is to determine if you'll mute participants upon entry. And that's just another click when you're setting up your meeting. If you mute everyone upon entry, it's kind of just going to be silence, So if you need to control the forum and you want silence, then you can click that button to mute people upon entry. But if you want the kind of forum where people come in, they will talk to one another, they'll kind of network with one another, don't mute them right away and ask them to mute when you start the meeting. So someone is asking, can you kick unwanted, uninvited participants off the Zoom meeting? So that is a question that I have not had to experience, fortunately, because I've always used a password and I've never been, they call it Zoom bombed. What I have experienced in a meeting is people asking, who is this? You know, if they have a name or just a number on their box, and asking people to leave. But the problem is they could disrupt your meeting before you even know that they're there. And you might not be able to ask them to leave if their intent is to disrupt. So I wouldn't even take that chance. I would just set a password for every meeting that you're going to do, even if it's just a small group. I meet with my sisters regularly. We do a book club and I use a password. There's only 5 of us on the call, but I use a password because I don't want anybody to have malicious intent or even just to be a prankster and try to come into that meeting. Jean says she opens the doors about 20 minutes before the Rotary meetings for socializing. I think that's a great practice. And if you are going to open the doors early, you can do some formalized networking. You can let people know, hey, jump on 15 minutes early and then ask some, networking questions, ask people to give an update. Can the host send a private chat to those in the waiting room? I don't know if you can send that to people in the waiting room, but once they are in the meeting, a host can send a private chat to anyone who's in the meeting. We talked about that chat feature earlier. You can see it either says everyone, or you can click on the down arrow in the chat feature and pick the name of the person that you want to send a private message to. So not only can the host send a private message, but everyone can send a private message to anyone in the Zoom meeting. As I mentioned before, if the meeting is being recorded, all of those private messages are being recorded as well. So when the host of the meeting downloads the meeting, they can download a transcript of the meeting and they get not only all of the group messages, but they get all of those private messages as well. So you should just be aware of that fact. Bill is asking exactly when does the 40-minute time period begin? When you schedule your meeting, you schedule the time that it starts. So if that time says 10 a.m., your 40 minutes starts from 10 a.m. Even if you don't log on until 10:05, your 40 minutes is still starting at 10 a.m. when you schedule that meeting to start. And Adeline says the host can send a message to everyone in the waiting room. So that's if you use that waiting room feature or not, just plan that ahead of time. So you know if you have some people sitting there waiting, you'll know you can communicate with them or not. Any other questions about scheduling before we move on to the actual meeting? And you can feel free to ask if you want to unmute or use the chat feature. Okay. Pre-meeting. So this is you as the host. This is what, if you're facilitating, if you're going to be part of a panel, if you have a role in the meeting. Kathleen is asking once again, what is the password for this meeting? The password for this meeting is 7390. But if you use the one link, if you just clicked on the link, it's embedded. So if you sign on with the meeting ID, you have to enter a password separately. If you just clicked on the link that was sent out, the password was embedded in that link. So only people who had the link could get into the meeting, okay? Number one, when it says determine your best location with attention to background or use a virtual background, that's you. That's making sure, you know, like if I turn my screen this way, you're going to have my kitchen as the background. If I turn my screen this way, you're going to have a wall of photos as the background. I opted to have a plain background so it's not a distraction. For anyone who wants to use a virtual background, if you go to your video settings and hit the down arrow, there's video settings, and then there's a choice, virtual background. So you can go there and upload a picture to put a virtual background behind yourself if you want to. If you use a virtual background, you can avoid, you know, the kitchen scenario, and you can just put up that virtual background. However, if you do so, you have to have a certain quality, certain level of camera for it to work. You have to have a certain level of computer for it to work, or else it gets very choppy and very grainy, and it can get to be distracting. Also, even if you are using a virtual background, it works best when your actual background is somewhat plain, or else parts of your wall, your photographs start popping through the virtual background. Good lighting is essential. I use these painter's lights that you can get at the home supply store. They cost about $5, and they have a clip, so it can clip onto the back of a chair. It can clip onto a bookcase or something else that's near you. And I always have a light that is focused on me. Backlighting can be a problem because if you're backlit, there's going to be a shadow, and you will not be clear, and the people on the other end won't be able to see you very well. I also like to establish height with the camera, and I use something like this. It's just a computer stand. It's maybe $20 at the office supply store, and you can put your computer right on the stand, and so it creates a little bit of height, and you don't have the scenario where, you know, only your eyes and forehead are being seen. You have, you know, really hands-free, nice down angle looking on you. Number 4, use audio headsets if possible. It makes it easier for the people to hear you as the speaker, because your voice is, the headset microphones kind of pick up your voice better. And if there's people around you, wearing the headsets means that only you hear what's happening, and it creates a better sense of privacy. So if you can use audio headsets, you know, I recommend it. If you're just going to be by yourself in a room, it doesn't matter as much, but for privacy and for quality, the headsets and microphone are preferable. I always have a water available if I'm doing a lot of speaking like I am tonight. I always have a water, a pen, a piece of paper to take notes on. I have all of these things set up in advance, and I create my little training station. Right now, I'm just at one end of my kitchen table, and I just create this training station and have everything that I need. I also have my cell phone handy, and I use my cell phone alarm feature to, it set the time that I was supposed to start, and I use it to set 5 minutes. I set an alarm 5 minutes before we're supposed to end, so that I don't go over time. My alarm will go off. It's sitting right here. I use a phone stand. It's just a little thing that you can put your cell phone right on, and I can keep one eye on the time the whole time I'm facilitating the content. If additional speakers are coming to join a panel, or you have speakers coming to your Rotary meeting, either do a practice run with them or schedule them to arrive early. If you're opening the doors to your guests, 15 minutes early, ask your speaker to come a half hour early and make sure that their sound is good, make sure that the speaker has good lighting, make sure that the speaker's face can be seen, and do your speaker a favor by just giving them some, just some good tips for how their background looks. They might want to practice sharing the screen and just to work out any kinks and let your speakers get comfortable in the setting. If you're doing a panel for your meeting, the best advice I can give you is to share the questions and share the timeline in advance. So if your panel is only 20 minutes long and each panelist only has 5 minutes, let them know, and then you as the moderator can make sure that no panelist is taking all of the time. And this last one on this slide is open the meeting 15 minutes ahead of time if possible. Jean commented that she gives people 20 minutes to come on. At Leadership Harrisburg area, I usually give people 30 minutes and I call it pop-up networking. So if my program is going to start at 6 p.m., I invite people to come on at 5:30, and I have no screen share. It's just to see everybody's faces, and I usually ask questions like, I have questions ready in advance, like, what was your first job that you had as a teenager? What is your favorite vacation spot that you've ever been to? What, in a Rotary context, you could ask, what's your favorite club service project that you've ever participated in? So you can use that time and be very specific with asking people questions and making people feel engaged, because gosh, we haven't seen each other's faces in such a long time. Any questions about the pre-meeting? You can use the chat or you can unmute yourself. I'm kind of scrolling through my people to see if anyone's got a hand up. Anything to add? Some of you do a lot of Zoom meetings as well. Is there anything to add for scheduling or pre-meeting at this point? Anything that I've overlooked?
This is Roger Hipple.
Hi, Roger.
Our club uses the 15 minutes ahead of time as a meet and greet and chat between the members, because they haven't been able to see each other in person for such a long time. Lately, that's been a very important part of the meeting, because they can talk to each other and ask what's going on in their life, and see if there's any things that they need or that they can do for each other. It's kind of a nice interaction. Highly recommend it that you add it to your meetings. Yeah, thanks, Roger. It is a really great practice, and you could even devote an entire meeting to doing that. If your club is small enough, you could give everybody, 3 minutes to provide an update, just because we haven't seen each other in so long. Thank you. Anything else to add, or any questions at this point? What's a good way to manage pre-meeting networking as well as the tech check for the speakers? So I guess it's timing. It's all about the timing. And if you're really going to facilitate 30 minutes of pre-meeting networking, then you need to have your speakers come on 45 minutes earlier so that they don't conflict. If you are starting the meeting early, you can ask your speakers to come on well before the rest of the group comes on, even if they just come on 45 minutes early and then come back. They can go do their other business they have to do and then come back when the meeting starts. You can always ask them to come early and then come back.
Bill is asking, does the pre-time cut into the total 40-minute time? Yes, it does. If you only have 40 minutes, if you're using the free Zoom account, then you've got to make every minute count. So what you could do, Bill, is you could use a 40 minutes to schedule just the networking part, and then you could use a second 40 minutes to schedule a second meeting that would be your content. So you could put two 40-minute meetings kind of back to back in order to do the networking and have your speaker. Does that help? Any other questions? And then we've got a half hour left.
Hey, Una, it's Mike Zick. I've found that it's also nice to ask for the slides ahead of time, especially for someone who's not familiar with Zoom. That way you're kind of taking a little bit of that burden off of them and you can push their slides to everybody.
Yeah, good call, Mike. And we're going to get into that a little bit in the next couple of slides too. But it's a good idea. Thank you. Okay, this is the actual meeting facilitation. So if you are the meeting facilitator, you are establishing the tone of the meeting. If you are not the meeting facilitator, appoint somebody else who can do that. Our club has hosts, just like we would have greeters in person who would shake everybody's hand as they're walking in. We have greeters who say hello to everybody when we're coming onto the Zoom call. So make sure that you have kind of a friendly tone. Anne saying that her phone is about to die. Sorry, Anne, this will be recorded and it will be up on the district website. Bye-bye, Anne. So, welcome everybody. Make them feel as close to a live in-person meeting as you can. Acknowledge people as much as you can when they're joining the call. Start the meeting on time. For those of you who arrived on this call a little bit early, you may have noticed that I started to give a countdown. I said, okay, we'll start our meeting in 10 minutes, and then we'll start our meeting in 5 minutes. Okay, we have 3 minutes until our meeting starts. So just to let people know, there's a countdown, and then always start your meeting on time. You can announce the Zoom protocols and the expectations. So that's how I said, asking people to mute their audio, asking people to enable their video if they can. Any reminders that you want to give people right up front to use the chat feature. Let them know, even though we've all been on Zoom calls a lot now, you never know how familiar people are with this format. So just remind them and help them out. Number 4 on here is to let people know if you're recording. And I've mentioned that several times because, people might ask questions or make statements that are very personal, and they need to know that this is going to be recorded. It's going to be put on the website, which is a public forum. So it's just courtesy to let people know that it's recording. Reiterate the purpose of the meeting, and I think I did that right up front to say, we're learning Zoom. This is for people who are facilitating or hosting a Zoom meeting, but just remind everybody, again, we're so busy. People might have had a long day. We're doing these meetings in the evening. A lot of people have been working for 12 hours by the time they get to this meeting. So just remind people why they're here. Engage participants. So we don't have it here tonight, but I use polls a lot. It's a paid feature, and I'll ask a question and everybody can kind of type in their answer. It kind of makes you involved. You're doing something in the meeting, so you can always consider to do that. The chat feature is a great way to get people involved, and I'm going to pause right now and just showcase that. I'm going to ask you all to use the chat feature and type one word about how you're feeling right now. use the chat feature to type in one word about how you're feeling right now. Engaged, tired, hungry, thirsty, engaged, exhausted, hungry, energized, hopeful, interested, hungry, interested. So that is just a way that you can kind of make sure that people are, somebody said Zoomalicious. That's a good one. Someone said groovy. So that's just a way to kind of get a check on the pulse of the people in the room, is to use that chat feature, maybe ask a one-word question. Number 7 is utilize facilitator and producer roles. And I'm going to talk about that on the next couple of slides. There really should be 2 different roles for facilitating and hosting a Zoom meeting. I don't have that luxury tonight because John Anthony had to go to another meeting, but I'll still review those 2 different roles in the next couple of slides. So hang on for that. Number 8 is to review meeting outcomes and action items if necessary, especially if there's an assignment. If you are asking people to do something as a call to action after the meeting, you want to review that near the end. You want to thank everybody for attending the meeting and, of course, end the meeting on time. Everyone appreciates that. If you are the facilitator and you notice that you're running out of time, you can always let people know, listen, I think we're going to go 5 minutes over, just so that they know. Or if you want to end on time, say anything we didn't cover, we'll do in another meeting, and you might have to schedule, or you might have to do it in a follow-up email communication. So there's a lot of ways that you can still get that information to them and still end the meeting on time. So outside of the facilitator and producer roles, which I'll get to in just a minute, are there any questions or comments about the actual meeting facilitation or anything to add? Other people who facilitate a lot of meetings, is there anything else to add to this list? Adeline, I know you facilitate a lot. Do you have anything to add?
Well, I'm really interested in what you're going to say about producing, because
Okay.
I kind of feel like I'm more of a producer instead of a facilitator. So I'm here to listen today.
Yeah, that could be. Now that I think about the roles in our club. This question, do you typically have someone other than the moderator push the slides? And I'll get to that. It actually ties right in to number 7, utilizing a facilitator and a producer. So I'm going to go on to that. And the facilitator, which is me in this case, is managing participant engagement, when to use the chats, polls, when to use questions. The facilitator is kind of the front-facing person. As the facilitator, I developed the content for this program. It was my video, slideshow, anything that I put together as far as content, that comes from me as the facilitator. It's my job to make sure that the dialogue happens. It's my job to make sure that the content is done in time. And it's possibly my job to manage the chat feature. So as a facilitator, I'm really comfortable in a Zoom setting. I do it a lot. I facilitate in person a lot, and all of that kind of has transferred. I'm comfortable managing the chat feature, but sometimes the facilitator is not, and they say to the producer, who is more on the back end of the Zoom meeting, the producer is kind of the more technical role, and the producer might be the one who manages the chats, because it can be really hard to be delivering content, keeping the participants engaged, and manage the chat feature. So if you are not comfortable and you're not skilled enough at Zoom to juggle all of these things, enlist somebody else to be the producer. The producer, you can make them the co-host of the meeting. And the way that you do that, you go to where it says participants across the top. It's at the top of my screen right now. And when you hit participants, you can click on one person's name and there's 3 little dots beside their name, and you click on those dots and a co-hosting option should come down. If you're trying to practice it right now, it probably won't work because this is not your meeting and you're not the host. But when you are the host, you should be able to make someone else the co-host and then they can help you out. Elaine says she was in a meeting where the group had a parking lot chat, which was another free exchange time at the end of the meeting. That's a great idea. And I really think that people don't mind sticking around at the end of the meeting and having a little bit more time to talk. Doug is asking, what's the difference between a host and a facilitator? A host is Zoom terminology. It simply means the person who started that meeting. The facilitator is just any other terminology, the person who is leading the meeting, leading the discussion. So, for example, District Governor John Anthony is the host of this meeting. He started it, it's on his account. When he came on, he transitioned that power to me. He made me the host so that I have the technology controls. So hosting is a Zoom term. Facilitating is just like you would do live or on Zoom. The facilitator is the one who is moving the meeting along, who is getting that meeting to the purpose for which the meeting was established. The facilitator is usually the expert on that topic, whatever the topic might be, and that's a universal term. I hope I'm not confusing anybody with these terms, but the producer, getting back to this, try to make that person the co-host so that they can help you with managing the meeting. They will mute people if necessary. So I've had to keep scrolling through. If I hear any background noise, I've had to scroll through the pictures and mute people throughout the meeting. If John was here, he would be the producer and he would be muting people to do that. If there are breakout rooms, which is another, we can practice breakout rooms after the slideshow if anybody wants to, but usually if you have a producer, it's just easier for someone else to manage technology. John Cran is asking, should a Zoom meeting differ in format than an in-person meeting? My goal is to always make the Zoom meeting flow and feel as much like an in-person meeting as possible. That is always my goal. Zoom is a tool that we can use to create this forum just as we would if we were in person. So my goal is to always make it feel in person. Mike is talking about hybrid meeting with in-person and Zoom at the same time, which we can get to that in just a minute as well. If you have a manager, if you have a producer, they can manage polls, they can manage recording. If you were on at the beginning, just a few minutes before the meeting, John Anthony reminded me to record the meeting. And I said, I better do that now because once I get into my facilitator role, I'm going to forget. And so it's really nice to have a producer who can kind of manage all the technology and remember to hit record. Your producer can run your slides for you. I know somebody, I think it was Mike, who mentioned that earlier. Get the slides from your presenter in advance. So have that conversation with your presenter. For me personally, I would rather manage my own slides. I would rather advance my slides and be able to go backwards. And some people are not that comfortable. So have the conversation before the meeting and say, you know, do you want to provide me your slides and have me advance them for you? Or do you want to screen share and do your own slides? Your producer, again, could possibly be managing the chat feature, and that depends on how comfortable you are as a facilitator. I like to manage the chat feature because I'm trying to use it to build engagement, but some people just cannot manage both. So the person who's delivering the content could have somebody else following the chat, and that person can unmute themselves and say, hey, Una, there's a couple questions in the chat feature. Can you answer them right now? Adeline asks, is there a way to only allow screen share to specific individuals? Yes, that's also in the setup. And so you can set up your meeting when you're creating the meeting to determine, can everyone share slides? Can only the co-host share slides? Can one person share slides at a time? John has these meetings set up to where anyone can slide share. And it's just one of those check boxes you need to look at before you check the meeting and see what your account setting says. The producer can run other tech as needed, and the producer can help address problems and help you with troubleshooting. So I've been on a call as the facilitator and somebody saying, I can't hear you, I don't have any sound, and I can't stop facilitating the meeting and help that person figure out how to get sound on their computer. But if there was a producer, the producer could work directly with that person through the chat feature or whatnot to address that need, whatever that need is. So I always like to have a producer on deck for support. It's a luxury. I don't always get to have that luxury, but if you do in your club, try to find somebody who's really comfortable with Zoom, who understands all of the different settings, and enlist that person as support for whoever might be facilitating the meeting. So any questions about the producer or facilitator role, or any questions in general about the content? You can unmute yourself and ask, or you can use the chat feature.
Is there a manual of where the basics or the features that a host or a producer would use to do all of this magic?
So, Doug, thank you for the question. There's not a manual, but Zoom offers a number of tutorial videos. And so you can Google in the search bar, any question you have about using Zoom, you can Google that and you'll get a video answer directly from Zoom. And again, I'll have a PDF form of this presentation as a handout. I think Hector raised his hand, and then Bill will get back to your question. Hector, go ahead.
Yes, Una, what makes determine what platform you use is the number of people. Sometimes you call this webinar, sometimes people can see the faces, sometimes you cannot see the faces, you cannot even speak. What determines that type of settings for a meeting? Is the number of people and why that happened?
Hector, it's really an individual determination. And I do not prefer the webinar format. We talked about that at the very beginning of the meeting. Webinar is when it's one-sided. It means I'm just pushing information out to anyone who's there, and they may or may not even be able to ask a question in the chat feature. You know, it's very one-sided. So it's up to you as a facilitator. Do you want a one-sided forum, or do you want an interactive forum like this? I have had interactive forums like this with over 300 people. And sometimes people would say if there's more than 100 people, they would go to a webinar. I don't prefer the webinar format. So even with over 300 people, I continue to use the meeting format, and I have just managed the meeting in such a way that people have been respectful and cooperative, and we have not had any problems with it. Some people are asking, what are the typical costs to have the Zoom features, and are there different levels? Yes, there are different levels. So if you go to the Zoom website, you can look up, they have different programs, different platforms based on an annual dollar amount, and you can actually add one feature or another, so you can kind of even build your own account and get the features that you need. The prices range from, you know, like $150 a year to, you know, what I have at work is about $600 a year. And then for large corporations, it could be well over $1,000 a year if they have multiple users on that account. So it's very versatile. I'm not making a commercial for Zoom. I mean, there are a lot of other platforms. There's Microsoft Teams. If you have Microsoft, there's GoToMeetings. You know, there's a lot of different platforms, but for the fact that Zoom has a free version, it is very feasible for Rotary clubs to use. Is there a number limit as to how many different Zoom meetings a group could schedule per day? And Bill, that's going to go back to your account. You have to go into those account settings and look at what the parameters are for each different account, because every account is different. Larry is asking, would it be helpful to see a screenshot of the meeting settings used for this meeting as a reference? I would have to put that back on John Anthony because it's his meeting, and I don't know how he set it up. Let me see. Yeah, I couldn't even share my own Zoom account to do that because I don't think it would work. We can ask John Anthony to show us a screen share of his setup. What I have done a lot is practice. I've called a couple people and said, you know, can you practice with me on Zoom? I just want to test something, and set up a meeting for 15 minutes, get 4 people on the call, and just test out different settings and make sure that they work how you want them to work. Mike has a hand raised. Go ahead.
Yeah, Una, just a reminder, you were going to talk about breakouts. Do you use the somebody else as a co-host, and they're the ones who assign the people to the breakout rooms, or how does that work?
Okay, so there's 2 different ways. If you have the paid plan, you are able to create breakout rooms. We can practice a breakout room right now if you want to, but I'll answer the hows first since we have 6 minutes left. You can ask Zoom to randomly create the breakout rooms. You can say, I want 5 breakout rooms, and you can hit a random feature, and Zoom will just send people out to the breakout rooms randomly. Or once you have all of your people on the screen and you start to set up the breakout rooms, you can click which participants you want in which breakout room. So you cannot do that as the facilitator at the same time as you're facilitating. So if you want to assign people into, that's our 5-minute warning. If you want to assign specific people into the breakout rooms, you need to have technical support to do that while you facilitate. So let's practice the breakout rooms for 1 minute. Have you all participated in a breakout room before? Okay, I'm seeing some no's. You're going to see a message come up on your screen that says, do you want to go into breakout room 1 or 2 or 3? And you just hit yes. And then Zoom will take you to that breakout room and you'll find yourself with 3 or 4 people. And you can say hi to those 3 or 4 people, introduce yourselves, and then Zoom will call you back. It will give you a warning and you'll come back. So I'm going to set 5 breakout rooms right now. I'm going to assign automatically, and we're going to practice this, okay? So you'll get a message. Okay, it looks like people are coming back.
Una, question is only a facilitator or only somebody with a host function can set up those rooms?
A host or a co-host. And so that's really the advantage of having a quote unquote producer. And so you identify the co-host at the beginning of your meeting, and the host or the co-host can make the breakout rooms. So you can see if you're doing something like strategic planning and you want a certain group of people to be talking about membership or a certain group of people to be talking about fundraising, you can use breakout rooms for strategic planning. If you're facilitating networking, you can make small groups just so people can talk to one another. You could put committee meetings into breakout rooms. If you're having committee meetings, you can set people up for that. So just in closing, because we have just 2 minutes left, I would recommend to find out who in your clubs has high-level Zoom accounts and high-level Zoom experience, and try to engage those people to help with facilitating and to help with producing your Zoom meetings. Just a couple, Hector says, can you set the time for the breakout room, like for 10 minutes? It doesn't end automatically. You have to look at your own timer. I usually set a timer and then you pull them back in 10 minutes. I haven't found a way for it to happen automatically. Dodie is asking, how do you get Rotary virtual backgrounds? You just Google Rotary virtual backgrounds. In fact, I Googled one today and pulled it up. There's a wide variety of selections of pre-made backgrounds. So you can just go to your search browser and type in Rotary virtual backgrounds, and you'll get a whole bunch of different pictures to choose from. And let's see. I have seen breakout rooms with specific time limits. John, that's probably something that people can Google a video on that as well, but I usually use my own timer because I just haven't found that feature yet. This is the last question because it's right at 7 o'clock. Someone says, do you have suggestions or tricks for the facilitator to look at the camera when speaking? You know, the one trick that I have heard, and as you can tell, I'm not very good at it. Someone has said to turn off your own photo so that you're not looking at yourself on the screen, you're looking at the camera. So that's one trick or tip or suggestion, which I still have a difficult time. I try to put my paperwork kind of even with the screen at least, so I'm not looking down. I might be looking to one side. So it's right at 7 and I want to be, I want to honor everyone's time. So I want to conclude the district training session. John Cram will put the materials up on the district website as soon as he's finished with his other responsibilities tonight. And if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me. I think you all have my contact information, or you can get that from Melissa at the district office. It was great to spend an hour with you this evening. I hope you found the information helpful, and good luck. Happy Zooming.
Thank you.
Good night.
Very nice.
Thank you.
You're very welcome.
Night, everybody.
Thank you. Good night.
Everybody have a
Take
good
care.
evening.
Thank you so much.